Hello, everybody, and welcome to Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States. And today we actually have a very special guest, the founder of the Black Business Network and Black Business Olympics will be on. But let's bring our panel on first, the president of the Pod TV Network. We're going to introduce Kim Calhoun. Welcome to the show. And then we're going to have a pretty nice sized panel here. We'll have Lee Newton Rhodes from the World Edition will be joining us.
Morning.
And also Mark Lee, who's on every show in the United States that I know of.
About that.
As Professor George Gubin said, you can't get rid of him. He's everywhere. He's ubiquitous, as we well know. And our special guest today, the founder of the Black Business Network and Black Business Olympics. Let's bring in the Honorable Dr. Eric Kelly. Dr. Kelly, welcome to the Economics Show with the Honorable David M. Walker, who will be joining us later on. But we're here to learn more about who you are, where you're from, what you do on the show. So give us a little intro. In other words, we're going to put it on your shoulders now.
And of course, as we get prepared for a great day, first of all, I'd like to say to everybody, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Many times people don't take the time to say thank you. I want to say to Pod TV Network, thank you for allowing us to be a part of your family. And we look forward to all the great things that you continue to do. The Black Business Network, or the Black Business Olympics, is a entity that's been going on for the last 4 years, but it began in 1991 when my grandmother started the Black Business Expo. And what we've had an opportunity to do is to look at what's going on in our society and see how we could change those things. And we've had the opportunity to see that our kids have been committing suicide at an alarming rate. We've seen that Black businesses have been misrepresented and not had the opportunities that many other ethnicities have had. And we've seen so many things that have happened in our communities until the Black Business Olympics is a brainchild of mine because of COVID-19. And once COVID-19 started, because we were doing the Black Business Expo, we were raising scholarships for kids, we wanted to figure out how we could make an impact. And so the Black Business Olympics started in 2020, and we were able to raise some scholarship for kids. But what we found out was there's a bunch of business owners around the globe who didn't know each other and wanted to connect with each other. And so that is pretty much what we've been able to do in the last 4 years, is to connect businesses from around the globe who are looking at economic development as a part of what they want to be involved in. Many times you hear the conversation, when you hear Black, that it's one of those situations where it's not inclusive. But you can't be inclusive until you get your home in order. And we've had the opportunity to get many Black people from across the globe to know each other. My Rolodex is really increased over the last 4 years because it generally was North Carolina. Now it's and I'm open for questions.
Okay.
Hey, Dr. Kelly, one thing that you talked about, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this again so the folks on the Pod TV Network and the globe in general can understand the reason that we need to have the Black Business Olympics. If you can share a little bit about the statistics that you have heard about the state of our economy, because I do know that is something that you do on a regular basis during this monthly event. And I think that a lot of times other communities don't know it as well. So if you can share a little bit about the state of our economy as it is. Well, when you begin to start talking about the state of Black business, one of the things many people don't look at, and that's the destruction of the Black Wall Streets all over the world when there was a segregated society. And in many ways, Black businesses are still in a segregated society, whether we talk about how many Black businesses are doing great things. There's $11 trillion in our community. And I continue to say, if Black people would take that $11 trillion and utilize it in our communities, then the world would be in a better situation. But what has happened over the course of destruction of all these Black Wall Streets And many people will talk about Oklahoma as a Black Wall Street. They don't bring up Seneca City, which was in New York, where they just took Central Park. They won't talk about the Californias. They won't talk about the other places around the country. And they definitely won't talk about Durham, one of the first Black Wall Streets, because people don't really understand what really happened. What really happened was once these areas were destroyed, then Black people began to buy from other people, and it caused Black people not to begin to rebuild because they didn't have the money to rebuild. And so this has been something that's been going on for years. And once redlining happened and Jim Crow and all these other things happened, it kind of put Black people in Black business in a situation where they're still kind of swimming upstream. And so one of the challenges that we get all the time, and it's a challenge that I don't think is fair, is that whenever Black businesses start getting together, it's always considered something is wrong with that. But as I said in my opening, you can't really begin to grow until you get yourself in order. And so that's what we're working to do, is to connect people all over the country to do business together, not to exclude anyone. Because when you come to our network, come to the network and you see what we do, we have advertisers who advertise corporate advertising, and it's something that we look at, but it's not something that we look at only exclusively with what we do. And when we begin to talk about why we do it, and I want people to understand why we do it. This morning I was in a meeting, which was the same meeting I was in last week, talking about teen suicide, talking about and not only teen suicide, 6 and 7-year-old suicide in the Black community. And it's a statistic that 1 in 100,000 kids are killing themselves these days. And we have to ask ourselves, why is that happening? And one of the reasons that is happening is because our kids are pushed to believe that the only way that they can get wealth is by being basketball players, football players, singers, dancers, and actors, when we all understand and know that entrepreneurship is undefeated. And so that's one of the things that we're working toward, is raising scholarships so these students can look at entrepreneurship as a part of what they can do to change their lives.
Mm-hmm. And the latest stat I read, Dr. Kelly, there was 3 million Black businesses in the United States right now. And entrepreneurship, I think, is very important, but they don't teach that in schools. In other words, it's like half our economy is run by people that own their own businesses, and they don't teach that in schools. Is there anything they're doing in the Black Business Expo and Black Business Network to bring entrepreneurship to our schools, which they just don't teach it?
Well, one of the things that we're working on is talking with the PTAs. I was on the call this morning, talking to a gentleman who's a Black guy. And the reason I say it like that is because, he was the president of the PTA, and he was just talking about how you don't see images of Black men doing anything in that space. And so we was talking about how to put on some seminars and workshops for our kids to see it. And many people want me to go back to doing my Black Business Expo here in North Carolina. And I've said over and over again that what is missing is not us doing physical events. What's missing is that the information that we need to put out for our kids to see a difference is not being shared. And we must go where the kids are. Many of our kids are not, who want to be entrepreneurs, are not thinking about it in school because, they stopped doing teaching trades in schools. And so what we're working on is creating a course where these kids can actually come online. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. It's something that I haven't really talked about. And you asked me the question. You guys are the first ones to hear this. But we're working on putting together something like the Black Business Network piece that we're doing, where the kids can actually come and be taught the different areas of business. Many of our speakers that come onto the platform have been talking to us about doing mentorship. And that is one way that we're going to be able to do it. But I continue to say, you don't want to just jump out and say you're going to do this and do this and do that without a strategy. And so right now we're in strategy format, and that is the only way that we were able to do what we're doing with the Black Business Network and the Black Business Olympics, was to create a strategy. I'm pretty sure that everybody at the network remember when we first started, we did 1 month. And that was just to test out to see if it was something that was needed, if it was something that people could gravitate to. And so after the first month, we decided to try quarterly, which was very successful. And then we did 6 every other month last year. And this year we're doing 12 months. And our whole premise is to continue to build this network, or to build the Olympics to a space where we can train kids online, because I think one of the missing things that's going on right now is that many people are talking about, we want to go back and we want to go back and we want to go back to work. But what does that do? That means we go back into our circles, into our rings of the people that know us. And then there's a whole world out there that we're not addressing. And so we're looking at how we can do a hybrid, doing a physical event and doing a network event also.
Hey, Dr. Kelly, one of the things I was curious about is, you've definitely done a great job with it, is can you talk about the importance of connecting those of us here in America to those on the continent? Because I do know that is something that we've been seeing, is how a lot of the guests are coming from other parts of the world and part of what is considered the diaspora. So even some of those from the Caribbean nations and some of those that are like Africans in Europe and things in that space. So could you talk a little bit about how that work has been going as well?
Well, when you ask that question, that's one of those questions people don't want to ask. When you look at Africa and you look at China, let's just look at that for a moment. The Chinese come to Africa and they spend a lot of money in Africa, and they take the resources from Africa. Then they take them back and they take the resources to China, and then they come back and they sell those resources back to the Africans. That's backwards. That's real backwards. And I want to give an example of what has happened on our network. There is a company who does electric cars. The gentleman, his name is escaping. It'll come back to me. Who's doing electric cars. And there's a young lady, everybody probably knows of Barbara A. Smith, who travels around the globe and speaks around the globe. And so the gentleman spoke on the platform and was able to hear Barbara talk to him about the ambassador or one of the presidents in Africa was looking to find somebody who was doing the electric cars, because they wanted to stop sending their money, having their resources, they'll go abroad and start doing the resources right there in America. That's what this is all about. You know, when you're able to connect somebody in Jamaica, somebody in Europe, and somebody in Singapore, and somebody in Africa, and somebody in the States together to do business, then that's just a game changer for everybody. It's not just a game changer for what we're doing. It's just a game changer for everybody, because you're not going to, it's like a needle in the haystack to build business with somebody that you don't get an opportunity to meet. And that's one of the things that we found to be very, very important and instrumental in what we're doing in terms of the business, because there are 3 levels of audiences that we deal with. One is the audience of corporations and companies. The other one is businesses, Black businesses around the globe. And then it's number 1 is our students who get an opportunity to watch. One of the things that many people don't know is that we have groups of students watching what we're doing, and they're the ones who vote on the Olympic medals that the businesses get. We actually send out medals to the businesses, and when they come on and do a what I call an all right presentation, they might get a bronze or gold. And this past month, we did what we call a triathlon, where we had different teams to put together 11 subject matters with 11 different speakers. And this is just a part of what we're looking at doing as we move forward. But we definitely talk about how being in this space has helped people across the globe, and that's what it's about for us.
Mhm.
Nick?
Yeah, we've been joined by the Honorable David M. Walker, former Comptroller General of the United States, and I think he has some points to make.
Right, Nick. Thank you. I appreciate it because I'm in Chicago and I'm giving a speech, so I'm going to have to leave at 11:30 Eastern time.
Okay.
Dr. Kelly, I strongly encourage you to reach out to General Joe Anderson. Joe is in Detroit. He's a retired Army general. He is chairman and CEO of TAG Enterprises, TAG. He's a well-known and well-connected Black businessman. I'm on the Defense Business Board with him. I'm actually going to see him tomorrow and Wednesday in the Pentagon. His company deals with the automotive, aerospace, and agricultural industries. He's been very successful, and so I think he'd be somebody that would be good for you to know. And because networking, not only domestically but internationally, I think is very important. And leveraging technology like we're doing with this show is very important as well. The other thing I would say is that I had that we were going to also be talking about the debt ceiling. Let me just provide a few comments on that. There's obviously an important meeting coming tomorrow where congressional leaders are going to meet with President Biden. The current state of affairs is the Treasury Secretary says we could hit the debt ceiling as early as June 1. Nobody really knows for sure. If we can get past June 15, then we've got more time because that's when estimated tax payments are made, if you will. So we'll see. The House has passed a bill that includes an increase in the debt ceiling, but it also includes a number of other provisions, including immediate spending cuts and spending constraint going forward. It passed by 2 votes in the House. It's not going to be taken up by the Senate. President Biden said he would veto it if it came to his desk. It's not going to come to his desk. The Senate has done nothing. The Senate doesn't have 60 votes to pass anything, even a clean debt ceiling. The president says he doesn't want to negotiate over the debt ceiling. He's willing to negotiate over the fiscal 2024 appropriations and plans, but he doesn't want to negotiate over spending as part of the debt ceiling. The answer to this is the House Problem Solvers bipartisan debt ceiling proposal, which separates specific spending cuts from the debt ceiling, which increases the debt ceiling to the end of the year if certain conditions are met. And if those conditions are met, it would increase it till March of 2025, past the next election, if you will. There are a number of key components, but the most important key components is it calls for a creation of a statutory, what I call fiscal sustainability commission, that would have over a year to engage the American people with the facts, the truth, the tough choices, where everything was on the table. And they would come back and make a package of recommendations to Congress that would be guaranteed an up or down vote in Congress. It would be comprised of capable, credible, and non-conflicted individuals, no sitting politicians, no people who are so affiliated with organizations who have a direct conflict of interest. This is the way forward. And I hope and pray that the president, Speaker McCarthy, or the 2 key players can agree on this as a way forward, and then fight about specific spending reductions or whatever as part of the budget appropriations process, because we don't want to violate the debt ceiling. There's no need to violate the debt ceiling. And by the way, the president talking about ignoring the debt ceiling, that would be immediate grounds for impeachment for not just himself, but also for the Secretary of the Treasury. And so those are just a few thoughts. I'm hopeful that we'll get some progress tomorrow. It's also possible that it may take more time to reach a more comprehensive agreement, and so there could be some type of a short-term extension, while negotiations continue to take place. I know the Problem Solvers Caucus, which again is 64 members of the House, equally divided between the Senate and the Republicans and Democrats. They're actually drafting formal legislation to support their 4-point debt ceiling proposal, which hopefully will be ready before too long, because obviously you have to have specific legislation in order to be able to move it. So those are just a few thoughts. Happy to answer any questions. And Dr. Kelly, enjoyed your remarks, and you guys can continue
Hey, David, really quickly, with the debt ceiling and with all this conversation around the debt ceiling, and I know a lot of people are, some people are saying we're in a recession, some people are saying we're not in a recession, and some people are concerned about a depression. And even to what Dr. Kelly was talking about, we do oftentimes know that it is the poor and sometimes the other disadvantaged communities that are hit the hardest by depressions and by recessions when we have had them. So how close are we to having a recession or depression, and what are some of the belt tightening moves that the common man can make should that be something that we need to be concerned about?
Well, the first, just within the last week, the economic GDP numbers for the first quarter of 2023 were released. They can be revised, but the first number was the economy grew by 1.1% in the first quarter at an annual rate of 1.1% the first quarter of 2023, which is very slow growth. But since then, we've had concerns about the financial system. We've had 3 institutions fail. We've had further increases in the Fed interest rate. We also have concerns being raised over the debt ceiling issue. My personal view is it's likely that we will have a recession, but I think if we manage this correctly, it doesn't have to be deep and it doesn't have to be long. The real wild card are the 2 things that I just mentioned. The financial system, which, by the way, is in much better shape than it was in 2007, 2008. And if people didn't panic, we wouldn't have this problem. I mean, you have a lot of people that, want to demand to take their deposits out of institutions that are solvent institutions. But if they have too many people, wanting to get their money now, because of the nature of their investments in loans, in long-term treasury securities, or whatever else, they may not be able to satisfy it. An incredible high percentage of people want to get their money immediately. And so the people have a role to play here too. They need to not panic and cause a problem that otherwise doesn't need to happen. So those are my views.
Well, thank you, David.
Oh, by the way, one last thing before you go. Kim, one last thing. Several months ago, I made sure that I didn't have any money in institutions in excess of the insurance limits. So I redeployed a lot of my funds, whether they be CDs, whether they be savings accounts or whatever else, to a number of different institutions to make sure that I'm below the insurance limits. I'm really not worried about it.
And I thank you for sharing that information with us, because we need to learn how to better insure and protect ourselves. One question, and then three concerns I have. One is could some of these runs on the bank, or whatever you want to call them, be intentional to cause this problem? Also, the senators and congressmen all seem to be, like it doesn't matter to them if we go into a recession, and maybe it's because they're all protected like you are, and it won't impact them like it will most of the hardworking Americans in this country. But I've noticed things like, they're talking about imposing higher fees on people with good credit when they get a mortgage versus those who have bad credit, and imposing higher taxes on people who make, around $400,000 a year, which some people consider that middle class. I personally don't. But I'm just asking, are these things really taking place, and are these things we need to be concerned about?
Well, I think one of the things you need to be careful about is that the current administration says that they don't want to raise taxes on anybody making less than $400,000 a year. And and personally, I don't consider $400,000 a year middle class, either. It's lower upper class or upper middle class at a minimum. Okay. And it also depends on where you live, as you know, Kim.
Right.
Part of the issue is, but how are people affected? It's
Exactly.
not just taxes. Inflation is the cruelest tax of all. It is non-discretionary. It affects the poor and people who are on fixed incomes the most. All right. So maybe you don't end up increasing the tax rates for people making under 400,000, but if you're bleeding them because of inflation, or let's take then that's not good. Okay. And that could be worse than what you might do on the tax structure. Secondly, if you look at the banking system, they say, well, the taxpayers aren't going to pay for this. Somebody's going to pay for it. Okay. And let's just assume that what they do is they end up doing more assessments and raising more fees, to financial institutions. Well, the financial institutions aren't going to absorb that. They're going to pass that on to consumers. And guess what? Consumers are going to, personally, I don't worry about those kinds of fees because I keep enough money in the bank. They don't charge me for my checking account. I don't have overdrafts. And so I don't have to worry about those kinds of things. Okay. But a lot of people do, especially people that are near the poverty level. They have to worry about those kinds of things because they don't have enough money, right? And so if you're going to end up increasing the fees, those are disproportionately going to affect people that are near the poverty level and less well off as well. And so, now they're talking about, changing it to have higher fees for people that have better credit and lower fees for people who have worse credit as a way to try to expand home ownership. We can debate the pros and cons of that. I mean, it's kind of contrary to a long established principle in America, and that is that we should be merit-based and fact-based. But, this is just part of the move towards the battle between founding principles in our country and socialist state principles. That's what's going on. The battle between founding principles and socialist state principles.
No, along those same lines, and this is actually, I'd love to hear both your thoughts, David, as well as Dr. Kelly's, and I'm actually going to direct this toward Dr. Kelly. But one of the things that we saw historically was that there was some things in our history, meaning the African-American history, that was kind of our banks and our institutions that were an important part of that legacy. I'm thinking about North Carolina Mutual. I'm thinking about mechanics and farmers. So if you could talk about the importance of those kind of banks and the state of how those banks are doing, because I do know that some of them have been troubled as well and have been having some difficulties in that space. And you are oftentimes talking to those folks that are in those kind of banks here in North Carolina, but there are also some that are in Virginia that I know that Dominique is involved with and some other people as well. So if you could maybe speak to how the small banks are doing, particularly those in the minority community and the insurance companies.
Is that directed to me?
Yeah, I think they're directed to you.
I didn't know where Mark was going. I was listening, but I was I thought he was directing it to the other gentleman.
No, I was directing it to you, Dr. Geller.
Would you repeat that question, because you kind of went several different ways?
It was basically your thoughts on the small banks, and particularly the small banks in our community. Like when you think about the mechanics and farmers and the mutuals, because we do know that they have had some troubles as well.
And Nick, before the doctor does that, is Steve still on? Because I know he wanted to make a quick comment before he left, but he may have.
Yeah, he's just on just right now.
Hey, no. I just think that I don't really have anything to add. It was just really insightful comment. I always love to come when Dave Walker is here, and I just want to say that I think the other thing, and for Dr. Kelly, the other thing we haven't talked about is, as we're dealing with rising debt and the challenges of those that are poor, we're also seeing an unprecedented acceleration of innovation in AI. So I think on top of all this, I think in the next few months, you're going to start seeing jobs just disappear. It's already happening. Here in the Triangle, there are important companies that are getting rid of marketing departments, sales departments, because they don't need them anymore. The AI chatbots can do all of it. So I just wanted to throw it out there that this is why it's so important to create more entrepreneurs, create more jobs, to get people out of debt, to get our country out of debt, so that we can prepare people for what is going to come. I spoke to John Chambers a few days ago, and he said that this is going to be the most aggressive job loss we've seen in the next 4 to 5 years. Soon, he thought it was 4 to 5 years, but now he thinks it could be within the next 6 months. So I just wanted to throw that out there. This is going to be a new topic we're going to have to start talking about. But yeah, I just wanted to share that today.
I'm glad you brought us good news, Steve.
Sorry, it's negative, but we got to wake up. And
now he's bailing.
He's now going to bail after just.
I got to go to a meeting, but we'll be back on next week and talk about it. And Dave Walker, good luck with your speech in Chicago.
Yeah.
And thanks. Y'all take care. Have a good session. Okay.
All right. We'll see you, Dave.
Bye, boss.
Bye
I
bye,
want to hear
Dave.
Dr. Kelly's answer to that. And Kim Calhoun, it's great to see you, everybody. It's so great to see everyone.
Hi, Steve.
Dr. Kelly, you were answering Mark's question. So
Yeah, when you start talking about our small banks and begin to look at the lack of access to capital and people not putting money in our small banks, it's always a challenge. When you ask the question about the North Carolina Mutuals and the Mechanics and Farmers Banks who are, and of course, for those who don't know, North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company, which was, and I'm using this word very, very seriously, which was the #1 African American insurance agency, is no longer in existence. And I think that's a testament to what's going on in the Black community right here in this area. The new leader is down in Atlanta, but North Carolina Mutual, it pains me to say this, but North Carolina Mutual is in receivership, which means that they're no longer doing insurance. And the challenge that they're having is the same challenges that we are having all across the country. And that's the lack of support by Black businesses and by Black people across the country in these kinds of situations. There was a gentleman out of Atlanta doing a program for people to put more money into Black banks. And I think what people don't understand is that when you don't put money into your community, then you don't control your community. And this is something that we must begin to look at.
Yep.
Great.
Definitely agree with you on that thought and everything. What was your thoughts? Because you actually came out of, and some people don't know that, and those, except for those that watch the show, that you came out of marketing. But to Steve's point, what are your thoughts around this new technology? Because I do know that we are trying to get the kids, particularly the kids in the Black Business Olympics, involved in some of this new technology. So I was just wondering your thoughts about how that is going, because that is something that has been, you've been at the forefront of, Dr. Kelly. So definitely trying to make sure that our kids are knowing about the various things in those new technology lanes that Steve was referring to.
Well, Steve is dead on. We're in trouble. For those who don't know, if you don't know about Chat GPT and AI, we're truly in trouble because, they call it the smartphone. But you really sit back and ask yourself, is it really a smartphone, or does it make us dumber? It was a time, and I know I'm dating myself. I am 67, but it was a time when you could ask me my aunt's telephone number, my cousin's telephone number, and I could rattle off 20 or 30 telephone numbers. And now, barely sometimes I don't remember my other phone number. And so with AI and ChatGPT that is rapidly taking over, the question becomes, what do we know? And is all of the information not only credible, is all the information true? That's one of the biggest challenges that we're going to be having. But when I say that we're in trouble, it means that if we don't take the time out and begin to learn about it and get ahead of this curve, and with Microsoft and some of these other big corporations spending billions and billions of dollars to take over, it's kind of like what happens on Facebook and YouTube, and in terms of advertising. When we started doing the Black Business Olympics and we was doing all these numbers, Facebook put ads on our pages, and they sent us an email saying that we could get in front of 200 million people, and we could get in front of those 200 million people by paying them X amount of dollars. In a minute, it's going to be worse than that, because the algorithms that they're able to use, these computers are going to be able to manipulate the algorithms and get information in front of us faster and faster. And that's really going to be a problem, because now you have a machine that's controlling, what you see, what kind of advertising you're going to get. And that's going to be a problem if we don't get ahead of it, because understanding what prompts to put in is very critical in terms of this whole AI movement. We've had several companies to come on the Olympics and talk about AI, but in my research looking at it, I just really believe if we don't learn about it, we're going to be so far behind of what I call intelligence until sometimes we're going to be reading things and think it's correct, and it's just not going to be correct. And I think, like I said, I believe that we really need to get on that.
Yeah, Jatovi. You're muted.
Thank you guys. I gotta run.
Sorry about that. But all right, see you, Steve. To touch on the AI thing, and I think it's so what Dr. Kelly was talking about is already taking place and already happening. That's been happening for years. Matter of fact, years ago, you'd walk into Target or even walk into a CVS, and if you purchase something, the next few days you're receiving in the mail something, whatever, around the item that you just purchased, be it from your credit card or be it from whatever.
Totally.
That data tracking's always been there. What makes things free, like Google and Yahoo, what makes these search engines and other things that we utilize free is they're selling your data. Whatever you're searching, and that builds that algorithm, and that's where you get these ads from. And I wouldn't say that AI is making us dumber, because it does help in a sense. But the problem with AI is more so the jobs that it's going to take away. If you look at the analogy of going to the grocery store, and you can walk into any grocery store, years ago, there was a person at the cash register. There's a person helping you bagging. Now, when you go in the grocery store, you're having to scan your own food. You're having to bag your own food. Why? Because the advancements in technology. And that's what's going on with AI now, is the fact that and the big area that it's going to hit is the programming field, because AI has been there for a little while. The predictive text is there, but now they're doing it where they're actually doing predictive coding. So now you can predict whatever's coding. So anybody, on one hand, it's a good thing because it makes that kid who doesn't have the money to go to an MIT, it gives him the ability to create an app easy and quick. But it's also a problem because it's taking away a lot of these jobs that are out there currently. So your big time programmers are going to start disappearing. Your big time artists are going to start disappearing. Sad part is, just like in the grocery store, when those cashiers and those baggers disappeared, the prices for groceries didn't go down. So these prices for programs are still going to be up high and still going to be, just super expensive. But even though these these $300,000 jobs that are high paying programming jobs are going to be disappearing and dropping in price, what's going to happen is that's going to shift to the CEO, the higher end people, the stock buybacks, and so on and so forth. So that upper echelon is going to get that money. But that's the problem with AI, is that it's going to take away a lot of jobs that are like, the tech community is hit really hard right now. There was a big tech bubble that was built by COVID. That happened in multiple industries. And so you had a lot of money flooding in. So the tech industry right now is suffering a big bubble burst. And then you have cryptocurrency that's bursting that same bubble. And now you're having the AI that's also coming in. So you're having a death nail driven right into that coding, programming, and that tech world community.
Jatovi, thank you for that, because you hit on something that a lot of people ignore the truth and the fact of, and that is we will diminish our creativity skill sets in where all of this was developed in the past. We're going to lose all the real creators and the real engineers if we don't get a hold of this. And what I tried to lecture on this issue is AI was never intended to replace humans. It was intended to enhance quality of life. That's what it was intended and purpose was for. But I'm going to add to your grocery store analogy. Next year, robots will be stocking the stores and cutting the meat. And you can do it from a Game Boy, just like we get people pregnant now. But which you shared that story with me, and I was speechless. Like, I couldn't even find the words to go, oh my God, at the time. So AI is being used to diminish our human intelligence and rather than enhance it. And I think we need to double take a look at this, but you really hit the nail on the head when you said that we are going to diminish our ability to have skill sets to continue creating this kind of technology because we're not going to be educated in doing this anymore.
I wouldn't say that it's diminishing or that it's
I think it's
meant to diminish. Just as you said, AI was created just the same way the fingernail clippers were created, just the same way hair clippers were created.
To
It's
make
a
your
way-
job easy.
Yeah, but what ends up happening is money comes into play. When money comes into play, it's cheaper to have an AI bot service 300 million people and not pay the bot rather than paying an individual to service 300 million people. So
Well, I wanted-
it's when that money and that finance comes into play. And then in terms of our intelligence, this is where I think when we're speaking of getting out in front of, we have to begin to outthink. And that's the tough part. We always tend to lean towards, hey, well, it's just going to take our job. It's going to make us dumber. In all honesty, the smartphone didn't make us dumber. It just gave us more free time to learn something else. And we decided not to learn something else.
I agree,
So
but I
that's
want to
where
add
the-
something to what your analogy wraps around as well, and replacing the jobs is by doing that they are able to line their pockets more at the end of the day because the cost to income someone to in the United States, if you run a business, you know this. When you employ people, you have to get workers' comp, you have to get insurance, and all of this, when you go out to purchase it, is close to 1/3 of whatever their income is. So you cannot compete in the world and continue to employ in the United States with these kind of laws. If we could eliminate workers' comp and just say, insure the person completely, which would be cheaper to begin with, and if they get hurt at work, they're insured. But workers' comp doesn't get used that often. It's a price we pay for someone. I don't know why, but I would rather insure somebody 100% and pay for their medical insurance that covers them when they're sick and hurt and injured on the job than pay workers' comp, which was costing me 1/3 of whatever their income was. Those kind of things prevent companies from even getting a kickstart and starting and growing because it's not you kind of have to do this. It's you will be fined and punished if you don't do this and you're caught not doing this. So these are things people don't think about, and that's why they want to replace jobs with AI. It's a lot cheaper. They don't get sick. They rarely do they get hurt on the job unless they get a virus, right, Nick?
No, they're perfect. Computers will replace human beings.
No, but Nick and I'd love to hear
I haven't
Jacoby's
done that
thoughts.
in the baseball field, Jacoby, because they kept saying that the umpires should be computers who can watch the ball come in and determine if it's strike or ball.
Yeah, AI for
And then
umpires.
Jacoby, then they're going to come after your job because they'll have you announcing. It'll be the Jacoby computer announcing the game, and so. That's
But
the future.
Jacoby and Nick, the thing I was going to mention is, and I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on this, is I actually work, one of my jobs is with a testing company. And the thing that AI does not do that well, and they have not mastered it, and we can talk about how much they have mastered, is nuances and all in that space. Because I can tell you that there are things that even the computer doesn't quite understand because it does not understand and does not understand all of the natures of what the human is trying to say. So until the computers, and I'm not saying that they won't get to that point, but until they get to the point of understanding all of the nuances that are the human existence, I don't know that we need to be overly concerned about computers taking all of those jobs, because there are certain jobs that the computer will not be able to do. But that's just my thoughts around that.
Yeah, I want to listen to Jacoby's thought about his job being taken over by computers.
I mean, so the nuance and all the other part that will come at some point. You are correct at that. I mean, but the tough part is right now we're at the precipice, we're at the beginning stages of AI. And if we don't take notice at the beginning stages, It is much more difficult when nuance is in play and all this other stuff is in play, because that's much more complex. But right now, take for instance, you can go to Hootsuite right now is just Hootsuite you can utilize to push out tweets and social media posts to multiple different social media platforms. Well, Hootsuite, to cut down your overhead, they introduced a bot that can actually type in what you want, or actually just come up with whatever tweet you want to put out there. If you talk about nuance, that includes that nuance. It's that sales pitch, that grab, that hook. So it's getting there, and that shouldn't be the thing that we think, okay, well, now we got to start worrying. No, we got to start worrying now, just because at the very beginning, there's a lot of stuff going on with AI. As a matter of fact, there was that one bot that Bing put out, or the chat bot that Bing has put out, that already told some other dude he should get divorced from his wife and marry the chat bot. There's the one that Google used to have Google's been working on a bot for a long time. Google's been the leader in automation, beating out everybody and anybody. It's not even close in terms of predictive stuff and so on and so forth. Google used to have, I think it was Google Dream, where it used to make the images, how everybody's freaking out over, how it used to freak out over the ideas of a computer generated art. Well, Google's been doing that for a long time. They've been doing this whole dream stuff for a long time, and the images have all been dark, creepy, and it could be straight out of a horror movie. Well, now they're making all these cutesy ones and everything else, and everybody's, oh, this is new. It's not new. This is old stuff. The stuff that we see today has been out for 10 to 15 years at least. It's because of the technology. It's because, it's just the way it goes. The chatbot and stuff, we have to look at it now, and we have to understand what's going on with it. Why does it take you to a suicidal place right now? Why does it take you to a place of murder and hate? They talk about how the bots mainly end up celebrating Hitler and celebrating this craziness that's out there. It's because what it's driven by is all this information that it pulls from the internet. Yeah. And that should tell you a lot of what we do on the internet, and how there are individuals out there that search these things, and that gets put into a chat bot, and the chat bot goes down a rabbit hole. These rabbit holes that we create are the problem.
No doubt about that. So, Dr. Kelly, does this mean that you're going to be out of a job? Because your other thing that you're very much involved in, and we have a deep passion of, is your art, and all in that space, because you are an amazing artist and all along those lines. So are we going to not be able to get any more Eric Kelly art because of these lovely computer-generated art, or are we going to have you move in a new direction?
Well, one of the things that I'm glad I'm a special guest today. Hopefully, when I come back, I don't be a special guest and I don't be in the hot seat. But I really enjoy it. The art part, it takes me back to what Jacoby said initially. The creative people are going to be losing jobs. I think one of the things that is always going to be here is going to be some human touch when it comes to art. I watch a lot of these programs create new art, and then there was a suit suing one of the companies because the company was going out getting different artists' work and then creating that artwork for people, and then they were actually able to sell that work. Attention always wins, whether you're an artist or whether you're creative that's creating something utilizing other materials. Attention always wins. So I think it's more, it's not so much to losing, but more to how do you get the attention of people to see what you're doing, to sell what you're doing. And that's been something that's been going on all throughout time. And no, I'm not going to go into another field, but I have been watching what's going on. And one of the things, when they did NFTs for the blockchain and the metaverse, I watched that whole phenomena happen, and it's still going on, and created some work for that also. But again, when I say that we're getting dumber, and I want to make sure that people hear what I'm saying. I'm saying as far as where we are right now, the average age on the planet right now is 27, 28, 29 years old all over the world. And so with us being, and I'm just saying seasoned, and the reason I said we need to get in front of this whole AI situation is because it's going to affect us by people who are not us, that's actually utilizing the information. And when you start talking about these bots celebrating, Hitler and celebrating these kinds of things, and it just really says, what is the culture? What is the culture that they're pulling from that's having this happen? And we have to begin to figure out how we interject information in that affects what is coming out. Because again, when you look at what they were talking about with these new cars, these electric cars that are self-driving cars, and they did a report where they said that if a car is going to hit somebody and the car is going to make a decision, who is the car going to hit? It's going to hit an African American, or it's going to hit a white American. Which one is it going to hit? And it really boils down to what is the interjection of the information into these machines that help them to make those decisions or what they're going to do. And then that brings it back to when I say getting dumber, I don't mean we're going to get stupid. I'm just saying that if we don't understand this whole AI situation, what's going to happen is we're just going to be living in a world of listening to what robots are putting in front of us, and not what we should be putting in front of them. That's kind of where I was going with that.
An interesting thing that you brought up about the robots not seeing the darker skinned individuals or seeing Black people, it's actually true. And that's due to the programming that's put in by the actual programmers themselves, because this is another case of where representation matters. If there are no African Americans in the programming room and you got a lighter hues individuals in there, most of the time that AI is not going to recognize Black people. And it's been shown, they've done studies where they've shown the sensors that you utilize to wash your hands to the sensors. And this is why there was a big push. Honestly, Google was one that kept pushing out that we try to capture the true skin tone. And that was one of their biggest pushes, because yes, the way AI functions, so on and so forth. Yes, it doesn't pick up that darker skin tone. Key and Peele did an actual comedic sketch about that same exact thing, because it's a truth. It's just the reality right now.
Well,
is it true regardless of background lighting?
Huh?
Is it true regardless of background lighting, time of day, night versus day? That's a very interesting point that you're making.
What do you mean?
I would think maybe blacks would be easier to pick out during the day, whites at night. Am I wrong?
No, it's skin tone. It doesn't matter night or day.
Regardless of lighting.
Regardless of lighting.
That is so interesting.
In science and in research, we were actually working with the ability to read heat sink, utilizing infrared, and being able to see mostly, heat sensory, whether you've touched something, or also the heart and blood pumping in the body. But we were utilizing heat sinking, so we could just see a live human body that was still warm. And that was some of the technology that we were utilizing in our artificial intelligence. There are just so many different ways, but I think it's like Jatovi, it's, when you're working in the lab, you're going to utilize whatever you have at your disposal to be able to create things. I just think we just need to stay on top of it, right? We just need to make sure everything is I like the ability to read the heat sinking and the heartbeat and just seeing a live body. as opposed to, and plus we could also see if you had like too much sun on in certain parts of your body, skin cancer and things like that. It's pretty cool.
Hey, Nick, I know we're winding down, but I got a key question for both Jacoby and Dr. Kelly and everything. So I need to know, and know that Dr. Kelly's going to love me asking this question. When are we going to have an esports session on the Black Business Olympics on that particular show and that particular activity and all along those lines? So that's why I'm throwing it to both Jacoby and you, Dr. Kelly, since that is your field. So when are we going to have that?
Let me go before he goes. Our next event is May the 22nd through the 28th. Jacoby, let me know. Just let me know. It's the 22nd through the 28th. We are always available for anything that you're doing. So I want to make sure. That's why I wanted to go first. Have not had an opportunity to reach out to you. Be sure to put your number in the chat box. I get it from Mark. One of the things that we do pride ourselves on is sharing all of that information. And I do know at the last conversation we had, you was talking about them doing a big piece downtown Durham, some kind of arena of some sort. It's news. It's actually news. And like I said before, when we don't connect the dots, period, whether it's Black news or any news, whether we don't connect the dots, then, great things don't happen. And I'm all about, supporting what everybody on this network does. And I know we're getting ready to break down. I want to tell Kim Calhoun, thank you, Nick. I can never say his last name, but
oh, you mean Mark Lee?
No, Nick. Thank you. And definitely want to say, Mark, thank you for all that you're doing. And then Lee Rose, haven't had an opportunity.
Nice to meet you, sir.
But nice meeting you. I just want to make sure I get out I always do the thank yous. I just believe in saying thank you, because a lot of times that's one of the things people just don't do, because they just assume that you care. And I do care about you guys and what y'all have done for us, because to be honest with you, when we started out, we didn't know what we was going to do. And Mark came in and shared with us how to do what we're doing. And we truly are more than satisfied. And we're looking to see how we can do more. And I still want to have that conversation with Kim and Nick about the whole Facebook, YouTube kind of situation. That's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about.
The bots are killing us.
Yeah, but it's still in the room. Last month when we did our show, we were not on our Facebook, we were not on our YouTube, and I know y'all are doing something great, but my whole audience is been saying to me what happened last month, and I gotta figure a way to figure this out, because it impact all the things that we did and that we've done in the past, because our numbers just totally disappeared. So now we're starting on ground zero again. We know how we did it, but it cost us to get our numbers to where they are. And so we got to figure a way, guys. We got to figure a way how to. Well,
Dr. Kelly, we did figure it out. You'll need to follow the instructions Mark gives you, and it will work, because it was working, and it will work because it works for Mark beautifully. Yeah, exactly through the platform we need, and that's what's great about technology. If you I gotta run, everyone. Love all of y'all.
Go the other way, the bots.
Take care, Kim.
We'll go over the bots later, and we'll see you next week on Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker. Until then, have a good day.